Intel's CEO just quit right on the eve of tomorrow. We're getting the actual official information about Intel's next generation of Arc GPUs. We've got a whole bunch of other information about those, as well as then some huge leaks now headlining about AMD's next generation of RDNA 4 GPUs, including some discussion of their performance, all of that. Let's go ahead and start here with the video, then follow back on some of those other stories. So the headline we're seeing in a variety of places looks like AMD Radeon RX 8800 XT RDNA 4 GPU allegedly offers 45% faster RT performance than the 7900 XTX, on par with the RTX 4080 in raster and lower power too. Now I have a lot of thoughts on this and the source of this information in a second. Is the best gaming chair actually a heated leather motorized recliner with massage? I think so, at least after a long day of work when I just don't feel like sitting at my PC desk any longer. This is great for when I'm gaming on my Steam Deck or when I want to play with a controller on the TV. You can still be a PC gamer using a controller playing on the TV, guys. It's absolutely okay. Now, this chair has some absolutely amazing features. It can go all the way down into a flat position, totally motorized, but it can also not just sit back up, but actually get into a lift position which can assist getting out of the chair. This is amazing if you or someone you know is of limited mobility or elderly. This chair is amazingly comfortable. It's extremely adjustable. It has, for example, a whole bunch of different massage features, controllable zones, controllable patterns, controllable pressure levels, as well as controllable heating settings. It has a timer available on it. The remote for the reclining positions even has a USB charger, so they've really thought of everything. Even the headrest has adjustable positions, which is great, depending on if I want a game like looking at my Steam Deck versus looking up at a TV or reading a book. And you guys might be thinking a chair like this will cost you thousands of dollars, because honestly, from a lot of brands, it does. But the FlexiSpot Recliner XL6 is priced around $500. And I can get you an extra $50 off if you use code YTBXL650 when you click the link in the video description and or pinned comment. And that's if you buy one, you get 50 off. If you buy 2 units, you get 100 off. This is absolutely amazing. And again, it comes with a whole bunch of style and color choices, size options. The medium size I went with can support up to 400 pounds. However, the tall size can go up to 440, surpassing a lot of other lift chairs on the market, which is amazing. Again, check it out in the link in the video description and or pinned comment. And a huge thank you to FlexiSpot for sponsoring this part of today's video. All right, so when we're evaluating headlines like this and articles like this, you have to go to the actual source when we're talking leaks and rumors. To be clear, this is leaks and rumors. This is not official, unlike the Intel stuff where you have a lot more solid information to go off of. So where are we getting this from? This is coming from the ChipHell forums, which are Chinese language, so this is Google translated. So there are potentially some translation barriers here. And what is the source? Well, if you don't recognize the name Zhang Hao, and I probably butchered pronouncing it anyway, you might recognize the Jensen Huang head on the Lakers. Is that Kobe? I don't know, I'm not sure about the tattoo there. Anyway, whatever. The point is, you might recognize that from previous videos where I've discussed other leaks. And track record is everything. Zhang Hao has predicted things accurately in the past and been the first person to do so, and even specifically regarding AMD products. The most recent one I remember is, I believe he was the first one to get the correct release dates for some of the like 9800 X3D CPU leaks and things like that. So that does indicate that this source has information coming from the supply chain. And so, how accurate is it? I don't know, but does he have a track record of showing that he does have some sort of information? Yes. Now, let's pick apart every little detail of what he had to say. First of all, the headline is the 8800 XT, some rumors about the new Red Team 8800 XT. He is saying that he's not sure if that is the name. So, to be clear, even though we're getting headlines about the RX 8800 XT, we don't know if this is actually going to be called an 8800 XT. AMD might not even go with the 8000 series branding. At this point, I would probably expect them to go with the 8000 series branding, but even if they do, will they call their top-end card the 800 class card? Well, maybe not, because if it's their highest level product for the generation, I wouldn't put it past AMD to call it the 8900 XT or 8900 XTX. Even if it doesn't compete with NVIDIA's 9 series, 90 class products. Because, for example, the 7900 XTX didn't exactly compete directly with the 4090. It was more of a 4080 competitor, etc. So the point is that name is just being speculated on based on the fact that AMD said that they're not going to chase the Halo class cards with this generation. And we do have that directly from AMD and a quote from Jack Quinn that I've reported on previously. So they are targeting more of the mid-range, which means they may go with more of a mid-range naming scheme, but we don't actually know that, and he's being clear about that. Now he's saying AIB officially started mass production in mid-December. So now I realize that some of you know exactly what AIB means and many of you don't. So if you're just tuning in, you're like, wait, what is an AIB? Add-in board, sometimes they're called AIC, add-in card. The point is, AMD, while they do have their own first-party line of graphics cards, those aren't the ones that most people buy. Most people buy a graphics card that's maybe produced by XFX or PowerColor or Asus, Gigabyte, Sapphire. There's a whole bunch of them where they buy the actual GPU chip from AMD, but then they put their own cooler and board together and you buy that, right? So those are the AIB partners that he's talking about here. And also, if we mention he probably has, information within the supply chain, that's likely where he's getting that information, whether he works there himself or knows people that do that type of thing. Anyway, so AIB officially started mass production in mid-December. I think here we just have a machine learning translation error where it should be will start mass production in mid-December, considering it's not mid-December yet. Anyway, although it is ready for mass production, there are still some minor bugs. Now, he doesn't go into detail on what that could be. I mean, one thing is, could this be software bugs, driver issues running games? Because if these aren't going to come out for another few months, it's possible that the drivers don't, fully work amazingly well with the new GPU architecture yet for this generation. Now he says power consumption compared to the 7900 XTX is minus 25%. So what does that mean? Well, the 7900 XTX, I just looked it up again to be sure, was listed as a TDP of 355 watts. If we get 75% of 355, so subtracting 25% of its power, we are left with 266.25. So in other words, it would be reasonable to expect this to be somewhere in the 250 to 275 watt TDP, but again, that's kind of what we have to go off of here. And again, individual cards sometimes choose to push power beyond what the official reference spec is. So that's another thing to keep in mind. But anyway, that would be how I would interpret that. Now, he's saying that Biohazard 4RE ray tracing compared to 7900 XTX is plus 45%. Now, I have a lot to say about that. First of all, again, machine learning translation differences. Considering this has 4RE, we're definitely talking about the remake of Resident Evil 4. I don't know whether the Chinese language name of it is Biohazard rather than Resident Evil, or whether this is just a translation error. Maybe it's something in between. But we're definitely talking about Resident Evil 4 Remake and saying that the ray tracing performance is up 45%. This sounds really strange to me, though. Really, really strange. If we look at my actual testing of the 7900 XTX in Resident Evil 4 Remake at max settings, which includes their max ray tracing settings, this is not a heavy-duty ray tracing title. In fact, there's very little ray tracing at all in this game. And not only is it not visually impressive, but it means that also AMD is not particularly held back in low ray tracing situations. Here, I have the 7900 XTX actually matching the performance as my 4080 Super when I tested when the 4080 Super launched back in January. So, in other words, if we compare that to something like Cyberpunk's RT Overdrive mode, maybe using performance upscaling. So like a path tracing thing, here we see the 4080 Super taking an 83% lead over the 7900 XTX, and that's without mentioning the image quality advantage of the DLSS upscale versus the FSR upscale. So what I'm really getting at here is it's very difficult to talk about ray tracing performance using any particular metric, whereas a lot of games, when you're not using ray tracing, are fairly consistent in how they perform when you compare an AMD card versus an NVIDIA card. It can be less consistent with ray tracing involved because usually the entire scene is not being ray traced. There's some amount of the scene that's being ray traced, and how much of a bottleneck is that on your overall performance. And again, like I said, Resident Evil 4 Remake is really not a good game to test ray tracing with. And seeing a 45% jump in performance there just feels kind of wrong. That seems weird. But he did say other mainstream games were also tested, and is saying that ray tracing is indeed an epic improvement. So if, I would like to know what those other games were and what kind of improvement they saw there, because this one, again, feels like a weird game to be using and highlighting as the main highlight. He is saying the main reason is that it was too bad before. In other words, just saying that AMD used to lose a lot more ray tracing, a lot more performance when ray tracing is turned on compared to what NVIDIA does due to how it was handled. And in general, he's saying that there is a massive improvement in how ray tracing is being handled, and saying that, in short, it is said that raster ray tracing is basically 4080 Super. Now, raster ray tracing. So again, are we getting machine learning translation issues where... Is he talking about rasterized performance and ray tracing performance kind of evening out to match the 4080/4080 Super, which again perform about the same if you were unaware. The 4080 Super is less than 5% faster than the 4080. They're basically the same thing. Or is he saying that rasterized performance, and this is a weird translation thing where rasterized performance is basically 4080 Super? I mean, if the rasterized performance matched the 4080 Super, then you're just at roughly 7900 XTX levels of performance. Because in general, if we do something like look at Tech PowerUp's relative performance chart, the 4080 Super and 7900 XTX are all within about 2% of each other's performance when we're not talking ray tracing. But it's that when you do these heavy ray tracing workloads that the 4080 Super pulled so far ahead. But again, in those lighter ray tracing workloads, there was less of a performance gap. So I don't know. It's a little unclear what exactly they're saying here. But roughly saying that we might be getting 4080 Super class performance. So if this was basically, I mean, the most exciting way of reading this is that we'll be effectively getting a 7900 XTX class of product in rasterized performance, because that's roughly on par with the 4080 Super, but without the massive loss in ray tracing performance that we saw with the current generation 7900 XTX, and apparently doing it with 25% less power consumption. And if they are targeting the mid-range, which is what we've heard, then we wouldn't expect this to be priced at $1,000, right? Now, what are they going to price it at? $500, $600, $700, $800? It's hard to say. But if they came in around the $500 to $600 mark with 4080/4080 Super levels of performance, including in ray tracing, this would actually be really exciting. But again, all of that will also hang on what are we getting from NVIDIA, because by the time this card is out, it's likely competing with 50 series cards, not 40 series cards. So that's kind of been one of the things for AMD with their ray tracing, is they've generally been a generation behind, being one of the issues. Also, we want to see some AI upscaling like FSR 4. And all of this, we've maybe seen a bit of a preview with the PS5 Pro, which was said to have backported some of these ray tracing improvements from RDNA 4 into that product, as well as some AI acceleration, which allowed the PSSR AI upscaling. Now that's having some teething issues with image quality in a lot of games, although it does look good in some others. So, but again, PSSR is not likely to be the same thing as FSR 4, but could be running on the same, potentially be running on the same hardware. But AMD has specifically stated that they are working on AI FSR 4. So that's good. All right, I think that's about all we can dig out of this leak. Let's go ahead and jump into, so apparently Intel's CEO has announced his retirement. Given the massive problems with Intel right now, just in general, I've talked about this in previous videos, this was, in my opinion, probably not this was probably a you've been told to retire kind of a situation rather than a, well, I've done my job at Intel, I'm just, mission accomplished, I'm going to retire now kind of a situation. It does look like he's being replaced by two interim CEOs to take on different branches of the company. One of them seems to be, I think one of them is more of a marketing guy and one of them is more of a financial guy. Intel has named two senior leaders, David Zinsner and Michelle Johnston Holthaus, I probably mispronounce it, as interim co-chief executive officers, while the board of directors conducts a search for a new CEO. Zinsner is executive vice president and chief financial officer, and Holthaus, again, probably mispronouncing it, sorry, has been appointed to the newly created position of CEO of Intel Products, a group that encompasses the company's client computing group, data center and AI group, and network and edge group. And it says Frank Yeary, independent chair of the board of Intel, will become interim executive chair during the period of transition. Intel Foundry leadership structure remains unchanged. Anyway, we're going to have to see what comes out of all of this. The point is that Intel has definitely been struggling. But changing plans in kind of like foundry stuff and things like that and products, these can take many, many years. So Pat Gelsinger's been in charge for a few years, and it's true that things aren't going great, but at the same time, any changes he implemented a few years ago, it takes a while for any of that to actually come through, but the point is, he's gone. Now, with that in mind, Intel Arc is not gone, despite rumors having floated around for a long time now that there wouldn't be a next generation of desktop GPUs, and Intel is officially confirming they have some big graphics news. Intel Arc coming soon, December 3rd, 2024. That's tomorrow as of filming this video. And so what do we make of this? Well, one thing is, it's absolutely clear that the Intel Arc B580 is coming. I've posted that the Amazon listing was briefly shown, but it's looking like some people already have review samples because we have Funky IT live streaming his Steel Legend from ASRock, but this violated review embargo and that video's down. However, the images are out there, right? Once it's on the internet, it's not gone. Now, we can't really learn anything new from this compared to what we already saw from the Amazon listing of this product, but it's showing that, again, likely reviews should be out soon if reviewers are already being sent review samples. To be clear, do not... I can just say that, like, usually when I get graphics card reviews, it's not months in advance, right? So this would indicate that reviews would probably be coming soon. Again, we have Intel saying that we should be getting more information about Intel Arc on December 3rd. Let's see, what else did we have? But again, are there anything else coming besides the B580? Well, there's apparently also an Intel Arc B570 because ASRock's page for that has also been kind of leaked out ahead, so kind of stealing some of Intel's release thunder. So what do we know about this? So the B570 appears to be a 10 gigabyte graphics card, so not cutting all the way down to 8, which is great to see. Because the B580 was at 12 gigabytes. So it's looking like Intel is going to be targeting higher than 8 gigabytes of VRAM in this kind of low, affordable kind of price range, which is absolutely great to see. And we're seeing that this is a 10 gigabyte 160-bit GDDR6 memory. We see, again, just kind of the standard stuff. We do see that they're going to DisplayPort 2.1. This has 3 DisplayPort 2.1 connections. Now, one thing we see is that it is listed as PCIe 4.0, whereas previously we had speculated that it might be 5.0, and it is in a times 8 interface rather than the full 16 interface. So there is that. So now we can kind of compare the product specs between the B570 and the B580 and get an idea here. Now, we don't have the pricing information yet. I'm hoping that that is something that we get from Intel tomorrow. I've seen some leaks speculating that the pricing is somewhere in the $250 to $300 range for the B580, but again, we'll have to see. And the B570, again, we'll have to see. It'll probably be less than the B580, and what's the performance difference? So one of the big questions again is, what is the performance? So we've seen Golden Pig Upgrade, who again is a leaker with a track record of getting things right, talking about the B580, talking about it's focusing on the mid to low end, but then somebody asked, can you confirm that these two beat the 4060 Ti? And his response was, win by running points. But once again, we're doing Chinese to English translation layer here. So most outlets are interpreting this as synthetic benchmarks, is what it's being referred to here. Now, Arc GPUs generally overperformed in synthetic benchmarks versus actual gaming performance with the Alchemist generation. So will that also be true with Battlemage? We'll have to see. Now, we could then take that though and try to get a bit of an idea of where we're gonna fall, because okay, so if it's a 4060 Ti, and if it can beat it, at least in synthetic benchmarks, if the gaming performance was roughly there, that would put it along the lines of like a 2080 Ti, RTX 3070. I could move my fat head out of the way so you can actually see what I'm talking about. Kind of in this general ballpark, if it was matching a 4060 Ti. But again, it has more VRAM, which is nice to see. 12 at 10 and 12 is certainly more than 8, and there's a lot of games that spill just a little bit past 8, even at 1080p, on GPUs that maybe even have the performance for it, right? So that's definitely good to see. I'm also interested in whether or not Intel is going to be announcing anything along the lines of a frame generation competitor, because we do have mentions of XeSS super sampling. But we don't have any mention on the box art, it looks like, about a frame generation technique. So we will have to kind of wait and see if we get anything like that announced by Intel. But that's kind of what we've got so far. Now, the other thing I guess I will mention is that Arc Graphics have also popped into the latest Steam survey for the first time, just a pretty low market share, and considering it's listed like this is probably talking about integrated graphics, because Intel CPUs with integrated graphics are quite popular in the laptop market, so that's likely where that's coming in. Follow up on my story a while ago about the 4090 Ti found in the garbage. Video Cards has been in contact with the poster of that information, and they've actually got the card up and running enough to confirm it's actually the internals are really a 4090 in terms of specs. So it wasn't really a 4090 Ti, although perhaps this cooler design could have then been put on something like a 4090 Ti if they had wanted to. So that was kind of interesting to confirm it. They also mention that there's a bit more to the story than finding the card in a bin. They say the story is, of course, a bit more complex, but we're not going to go into details at this time. So it's still leave you to some speculation of where the heck did this thing actually come from. But the specs did end up lining up more with a 4090 rather than a 4090 Ti, but with kind of just that interesting quad slot cooler with the different PCB and kind of planted sideways. It's an interesting product. Also, since we mentioned DisplayPort 2.1, how about monitors supporting that? We are finally getting a look at MSI introducing pretty much the same thing as they already have out now, a 4K 240Hz QD OLED monitor, but updated to feature DisplayPort 2.1 at its full bandwidth, UHBR20. Not all DisplayPort 2.1 is created equal. This is the full 80 gigabit per second mode. So that's really cool if you've been kind of hanging on for that. I hope all of you guys enjoyed the video, found this useful and or interesting, and have an excellent day. I'll probably be back tomorrow with follow-up thoughts on the official Intel Arc announcement. Hopefully we have actual performance numbers claims to talk about.